No, you can't have done barrow diggers. That's impossible.
I'm just going nuts. What are they? Oh. No, it's not barrow diggers. And if anyone has got access to YouTube, right, they are not allowed to cheat, right? They're not allowed to cheat to work out the title, right? So we are actually on record now, and my tea has just boiled, so that's absolutely brilliant. So we're going to start chatting, and we're going to get on with it. Obviously, Dave is not joining us tonight, so that's a bit of a shame. Apologies from Peter from Dorset. He's not joining us tonight. He's joining us tomorrow. Adam's decided to commit himself to come to West Wales to spend a little bit of time here with the sheep. He's looking forward to that. And I'm going to quickly now. I'm going to run quickly, and I'm going to put this here. And I'm going to run quickly, and I'm going to go and get the milk, and we're going to get started. Okay, hold it.
Oh dear. He's not running very fast.
It's a long way. Go to the co-op.
It's a very big caravan.
The cold cellar somewhere. Dorothy's cellar.
So, weirdly enough, guys. Weirdly enough, we're fully started 7:44, which was quite early for me. Andy was very disappointed a few moments ago when I said there's no more barrow diggers, right? Andy, we've been doing barrow diggers for the best part of like 6, 7, 8 months, right? Andy, it has to come to an end, okay?
Well, yeah, there's not enough barrows left, are there? They've dug them all up.
Yeah, but Andy, I do the jokes here, not you. But
Okay.
anyway, the point is, I'm thinking of doing an occasional erotica in the Neolithic.
Right.
I was given a good book about called The Landscapes and Desire.
Ooh.
Right. Lots of erotica in there, right? So what some of you has to make the decision whether that's going to be sort of a bit of the ongoing lectures that we're going to be doing over the next few months. Andy, you've decided that's good. That's what we're going to be doing next week. We'll introduce that next week. Thanks, Andy. Right. So we are officially completely started, and welcome everybody on this wonderful lecture tonight. So we've got Drina, we've got Peter, we've got Pat, we got Andy, and Adam. Is that all we got? We got 7 of us. Is that all we got?
That's
That's a shame. That's a shame. Yeah, okay then. Well, you've all made the effort, which is great. So what we're going to do, we're going to start off with asking if anyone's got any news. Right, Adam, you can't tell us your news because I'm doing it, right? So you've got to do other news. Right, so Adam thought he would trump me tonight by sending me a news item like 10 minutes before we started, right? And he thought it's not going to get in the lecture, but it has done. I managed to slip an image in at the beginning here, so that's really, really good. Right, so Drina, any news from you? And by the way, Drina, that blue top of yours looks quite fetching.
I'm glad you like it. You asked me, or some of us, to find out about archaeologists that won awards.
Oh,
I never know whether your homework's serious or not. I found 3.
Hold on a minute, stop. It's always serious. Everything I say is always serious. And there's no Margaret tonight. Where is she?
She's having an operation.
Yeah.
I tell you what, she doesn't put us first, does she? Yeah, right, go on, Drina. Please give us a little.
3 men were knighted. One
Who?
woman was Arthur Evans, John Marshall, Flinders Petrie.
Right, so
And
we've got
then-
John Marshall. I'm not
Yeah,
really, obviously
great.
Arthur Evans I'm aware of. Yeah, go on.
This might not be, I might not have got them all. Dame Kathleen Kenyon.
Yeah.
And then there were 2 women that got CBEs, Maud Cunnington and Dorothy Garrett. And that's all I could find.
Oh, actually, Dorothy Garrett is a really good one. And Maud Cunningham, basically figures that do stick out in archaeology. And one thing, actually, I did jump into this too quickly when I said about doing the desire thing next week, because next week's lecture, if I can remind myself of this, is going to be Gertrude Bell. So you did Garrod. We're going to be doing Gertrude Bell versus Gordon Child next week. But it would the other chap that you said, it was Maud
Cunnington and Dorothy Garrett got
Cunnington.
CBE.
Yes, we've already looked at Maud Cunnington. Yes, he was a figure that we did in regards to barrow digging. Yeah, so he's a figure that's come up. And if you notice, that list is actually quite short. There are others on that list. I do know that a friend of mine, Stephen Clark, I think he got an MBE for his services to archaeology. Stephen Clark, Monmouth, and obviously Lord Colin Renfrew. He's his services to archaeology as well. So, there are others out there, but it's almost as if being an archaeologist is sort of a sideline thing, and you've got to go above the parapet. But you did. Sorry to interrupt. You did actually forget a certain Mortimer Wheeler.
Was he knighted? Oh, right. Sorry.
The Mortimer Wheeler, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
And that's the one that did Egypt, the Tutankhamun. I can't remember his name.
right, yeah, Howard Carter.
Yeah, they said that he didn't get one because he was a working class person. It was suggested.
Yeah, go on.
Well, it's like posh people get more.
Yeah.
That's a good point. The problem is, I think that there's another reason why Arthur, not Arthur Evans, another reason why Howard Carter didn't sort of bite the hand of the king back then, was basically because he was, people just started to look down at him. They didn't really give him the respect that he deserved, and it was like, I can't be bothered with this anymore. He was really, by the end of his life, he was really sort of bitter that he hadn't had the real recognition as an archaeologist and for the discovery, and he became very bitter towards the end of his life, and that probably explains why he just said, no, I can't be asked.
Okay.
It's quite sad, really is. It really is. And actually, lots of lives of archaeologists are quite sad, really, because when you think about when we think about Gordon Child next week, you'll see the sadness, and it's archaeology. I've gone a bit deeper, really. Archaeology seems to be one of those professions that attracts people who are rather nuts. Or people who are very lonely, and people who are very isolated in their thoughts. And in some ways, to be an archaeologist, you've got to be very isolated in your thoughts. And I don't know if I mentioned it last week or the week before, that people used to say of me that the only thing I ever cared about was archaeology, which actually hurts. But you can see where that comes in if that's all you're doing in your life, and that's your focus. And to be honest with you, if you look at Kathleen Kenyon and Flinders Petrie last week, their lives were archaeology. And if you actually look at the Leakey family, and you look at the Leakeys and you think, well, they devoted their lives to the Olduvai Gorge, and that's basically what they did, and that's all they did. was a complete lives. So archaeology sort of drags you in, and it becomes doesn't become an OCD, it becomes a complete obsession, and it controls your life completely. You can see that. Right, okay then, thank you for that. That got very deep. Right, Pat.
I don't know if the rest of you heard it. I heard it 2 or 3 times on the radio about this wall painting in Pompeii. And
Oh, I've done it. Right, carry on. Tell us more, please.
lo and behold, it looks like a pizza.
Oh no, come on. You can't. Oh, right. No, we
I
can't.
know. That's the
Oh,
news.
no, hang on a minute. We can't not do a pizza. Right. No, we've got to do a pizza. Right. Right. Okay, tell us a little bit more, and then
That's all
we
they
will.
said. All they said. They says, well, now we know where the pizza came from. It's right here, and there's a drawing of it, and you know they did it in Pompeii.
Oh God.
That was it. BBC.
Right. Okay. I've got my work cut out now. I'll find the pizza in the break. Actually, I won't do it now because otherwise we could be all day. Right. But we will do the pizza in the break. Thank you very much. Cool. Anything else, Pat?
Nope.
Okay. Right. Who else we got? Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to do the man with loads of hair. We're not talking about you, Andy. We're talking about you, Pete. Pete.
No, nothing.
Thank you. Right, nothing. All right. Okay. Right. Talking about people with loads of hair. Right, Andy.
No, I've got nothing this week either, I'm afraid.
Right. Okay. So what our learned friend Adam has to do? He has to find another. He has to find another story to tell us this week. Right. And he can't fail. Right. So go on, Adam. Tell us something more.
I have no news.
You can't just say that. No, you can't. All right. Well, Adam's piece is good anyway. So we will do that. So right. So don't let me down now, Anne. You've got a lot to. I can't say about Anne, right? Anne, I was thinking about you the other night, right? I was lying in bed, right, and I was thinking about you, and I thought, Anne's attitude towards sort of preservatives and sort of all the rest of it and so on. But you do go out for a bag of chips and fish. I'm sure you've had that with Drina.
Some, yes. Long time ago, though. A long
Oh,
time ago.
right. Okay. We'll let you off. So you don't have fish and chips from the old chipping anymore, do you? No.
Nope.
Right then, she's not letting into that. Right, Anne, anything you want to tell us? You give us a little bit of news because I'm just doing
Well,
something in the back.
I haven't really got any news, I'm sorry. It's been a very dull time.
So how are you enjoying the weather this week?
Okay. It's nice to have a bit cool in a couple of days ago, for the last couple of days, which has been good. But that's all I can say about it.
I would agree with you on that one. It's I really like this weather, to be honest with you.
Yes, I do. I've loved it, but you just need the odd bit of cool now and then.
Yeah. Right. So today we're going to be looking at a wonderful archaeological site in southern England. It's the one that you think of when you think about chambers, and it's Neolithic going into the Bronze Age, and it was used for an incredible length of time. And the material that I've got today, I thought, right, I'd all ready to do the one, and I thought, no, I found this piece on the internet and it reads really well, and I thought, well, I couldn't have done any better than that. So we got loads of images, but we're not going to do those images yet. So what we are going to do, we're going to do some 3 articles of the week, and obviously we've got to find the pizza in the break. I'm going to give you all some bad news, right? The first bit of bad news is that Pete's decided that he's going to buy us all ice cream in the next class, and it will all be melted by the time it gets due. So that's bad news. The other bad news, because I can think of the other bad news. Right, the other bad news is that we're starting on the new cycle. So monies are now due for the next 2 months. Pete really gets upset when I mention money, but Pete, it's £50 for the next 2 months for July and August. Don't forget Peter. And Peter will also have to pay for his other classes on a Wednesday. He hates me. So don't forget, £50 for the next 2 months. Try and get it over to me. Job done. Thank you very much. I thought I'd mention it now, get it out of the way, but I'll probably mention it again next week. So that's for the next 2 months. So I've mentioned it. Right. So, okay. So what we're going to do now, we're going to start the screen share. And it's good to have all of you on. We like your smiles, and it's so much calmer now. And we're going to not start with some envelopes. We're going to start with this. Now, this is an article about something that that Pat mentioned, right? And I'm going to get the information in front of me, and we're going to start off because it's been sent to me via an email. So it's been sent to me by Henry, and finger markings discovered inside a cave in France are organized and intentional and were likely made by Neanderthals more than 57,000 years ago, scientists said. Now, this was also sent to me by somebody else on my Wednesday class as well. I think it was sent to me via Goff. And this is what Pat was on about. So what we've got, the way we date and able to understand the markings is with the fact that there's a patina on the surface. So in other words, the stalagmites and the stalactites, the calcium is it calcium carbonate? I'm out of my field a minute. It creates a coating on this on the original cave surface, and those layers of patina can be red. So we're able to date the examples here to 57,000 years ago. These are thought to be the oldest known made by extinct human relatives. Well, the person writing this is under the misapprehension that the archaeologists think that Neanderthals become extinct. So we know that they didn't. We know that they sort of intermingled with us, and their DNA has continued down the generations. But one of the things with all of this is that I read this. I'm going to read this again. If you read this out, the oldest known art made by the extinct human relative Neanderthals. So, and I disagree with that. And I'm thinking, well, I actually sat down and I thought this the other day, and I thought, well, if you turn this on its head, and you actually said, what if we turned around and said, actually, Homo sapiens sapiens were near the edge of extinction, and it was actually the Neanderthals that actually saved them, right? That may sound absolute nuts, but if you've been listening to my lectures and we talk about news items of the week associated with the Neanderthals, the Neanderthal contribution to humanity is more than a contribution that Homo sapiens sapiens made to humanity. And you start to think, well, are we actually being told the right thing? And because we're getting sort of these mixtures of DNA, right? Who was actually the predominant hominid? Was it Homo sapiens sapien, which we're told, or was it Homo sapien Neanderthal, which this article says become extinct? But we now know that both of them bred together, so that we got the two gene pools converging to be a cosmopolitan hominid, right? And we've got other sort of hominid DNA in our bodies as well. So I just thought I'd chuck that into your minds, because there's something not quite right about every few weeks, every few months, we learn something else about Neanderthals. Like, you know, next we'll find out that the Neanderthals were the first to get to the moon. I know that that's not possible, right? But you know what I'm trying to say, right? It seems that the Neanderthals were first at everything. So if that's the case, how did they go to the edge of extinction and need to survive by sort of interbreeding with us to keep their gene pool going? Right, a good question. So what we've got is the archaeologists are saying about this sort of cave art that this is a complex and diverse as those of our ancestors. So in other words, this is there. 15 years after the resumption of excavations at the La Roche Cotard cave, what we're finding is that the cave itself is decorated dating back to 57,000 years ago, and it's you know it looks like it's some of the most earliest evidence. There are more images. I just really didn't have time to actually find them, but there are more images, wall markings, finger fluting, all sorts of things. And what they're working out is the research concluded that the wall markings were deliberate based on their shape, spacing, and arrangement. Well, that pretty looks much deliberate to me, don't you think? The types of markings found were circular, dotted, triangular, and wavy, and the organized and intentional shapes may be symbolic creations, according to the researchers. It is not possible for us to establish if they represent symbolic thinking. Well, I think that's absolute nonsense saying that, because if you said that about, like, oh, I tell you what, hieroglyphs, right? Hieroglyphs, for example, you know, we're not really sure that they represent symbolic thinking, right? So you can say that about Neanderthals, but you can't say that about Homo sapiens sapiens. So nevertheless, however, it goes on, our understanding of the relationship between Neanderthals and the symbolic and even the different realms has undergone a significant transformation over the past 2 decades. And the traces preserved in the cave of La Roche-Cotard in France make a new and very important contribution to our knowledge of Neanderthal behavior. What we find is that there is other infilling sediments in the cave, and these were made long before you've got the likes of Homo sapiens coming into the mix. And I'm joined by a little chick. It says that the authors of this work say this is a tribute to this lost humanity, whose role in the biological and cultural evolution of humans is undergoing profound revision. Yeah, and there's no lie there. In terms of culture, we now have a better understanding of Neanderthal activities, attesting to elaborate and organized social behaviors that show no obvious differences from those of those contemporaries anatomical modern humans. So in other words, what we're saying, in other words, what we're saying is that there's no real difference between what we're seeing in the Neanderthals compared to Homo sapiens sapiens. And even if there is a difference, it seems that the Neanderthals got there first in lots of cases. We need to think what's going on here. There's something not quite right. So the other thing that I wanted to look at tonight is about some questions that were given to me by Peter from last week, right? And these questions go as follows. And this was his thoughts, because he wasn't able to join our lecture last week. And this is Baldrick's son, which I'm trying to sort out a minute. There you go. I put him in his little hat. Right, here we go. This is what Peter said last week. He couldn't join us last week. This is the other Peter. He said he'd never heard of Kathleen Kenyon. It is interesting that despite her ability, knowledge, experience, and technical brilliance, she is still criticized for her ideology. I feel like someone with her aims would not be well received by academia today. I knew of some of her finds, Jericho, but had never had a name connected. And then he goes on about Flinders Petrie. He says, I know through Egypt Interesting that you say he was interested in weight and measures from a young age. I know he continued to be interested in measurements. It goes on to say, I believe his measurements of the Great Pyramid are still a standard regularly referenced. And then he says, question, what do you think separates archaeology like Kenyon and Petrie and contemporary well-known archaeologists today? And I would say that the likes of Kenyon and Petrie, I answered this last week, were more dedicated to archaeology than lots of contemporary archaeologists are today. So that was from Peter last week. And this is the sword. Adam, can you come in on this and just, I will read the article which I've got in front of me. Thanks to Adam. And Adam sent the pizza article. Adam, you are such a swat. So Adam, tell us why you were drawn to this sword, and then I'll read the article.
Well, the part of my brain that really loves Tolkien and fantasy came alive when I saw it. It really gives you that sort of mythological sense, you know, that you know, finding these sorts of artifacts so well preserved can give you. And I was just blown away by it. Thought it was a really beautiful thing. So that's why I sent it.
Yeah, no, I do completely agree with your sentiments, because this does blow you away. And actually, that's it in context, human remains. So what we're going to do, we will read out this article. It's only a short article, but going down this list, we've got some other things as well. So it goes on to say, German archaeologists are thrilled to have dug up a Bronze Age sword more than 3,000 years old, which is extraordinarily well preserved. The bronze sword with an octagonal hilt, there we go, was found in a grave in the southern town of Nordlingen. It is thought to be from the late, from around 1,300 years BC, so 3,300 years ago. Its condition is so good, it almost still shines. Well, you can sort of see that, can't you? Bavaria's State Office for Monument Protection says the grave contains the bones of a man, there we go, a woman, a boy, and other bronze items. The archaeologists are not sure whether the three were related, and the rarity of the find raises questions about the sword's origin. Well, I'm not really sure what they're saying with that last bit, but it says that manufacturing such a sword was complicated, as the hilt was cast onto the blade. The Nordlingen sword does not appear to have been used in anger, but it is believed to have been a real weapon, not just ornamental. We'll read that again. The Nordlingen sword does not appear to have been used in anger, but is believed to have been a real weapon, not just ornamental. So in other words, it was carried around by somebody, but it was never used in any kind of conflict. And what I'm actually seeing there from this image, this isn't, you can see these bodkins associated with a quiver of arrows. Now they're interesting as well. And we're loving that. And I really appreciate you bringing that to us. And actually, we've got the pizza article. We may as well do the pizza article. I was going to do it in a break, but we're going to do it anyway. So, right, let's just pizza article. Right, so basically, I know you sent me the link, but that's on my phone. So, pizza found Pompeii. Thing is, it's another thing about Pompeii, isn't it? We're always getting sort of new things every year they excavate, which is great. Here we go. Oh God, let's just get into it. God's sake, just take us out of our bloody misery. Right, here we go. Oh my God, it looks like a pizza. I gotta be honest with you, that does look like a pizza. It really does. And it really does, doesn't it? Pompeii archaeologists discover pizza painted. It's amazing that is just so well preserved. It's amazing. Absolutely stunning, that. And archaeologists in the ancient city of Pompeii have uncovered a painting which depicts what might be the precursor to the Italian pizza. I tell you, I'd prefer to eat that than a modern pizza, to be honest with you. Thin, bloody things. The flatbread depicted in the 2,000-year-old fresco may be a distant ancestor of the modern dish, but it lacks the classic ingredients to technically be considered a pizza. Right. What is the classical ingredients that's missing, Anne?
Tomatoes and mushrooms and cheese.
Oh no, we can get mushrooms and cheese. They did have cheese back then, but you've hit it on its head. Tomatoes. And where did tomatoes come from?
I don't know.
The New World.
No, the New World. Does it? Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So the discovery was made this year during new excavations of Regio 9 in the centre of Pompeii, one of the 9 districts that the ancient site is divided into. That's known as insula, which is a division of area within a Roman town or city. The building was partially excavated in the 1800s before digging recommenced in January this year. Nearly 2,000 years on from the volcanic eruption which engulfs the city. Archaeologists at the UNESCO World Heritage Park say the newly uncovered fresco depicting a flatbed painted next to a wine goblet may have been eaten with fruits such as pomegranates or dates, or dressed with spices and a type of pesto sauce, and a side dish of French fries. Sorry, they didn't have potatoes then either. Frugal and simple meal and the luxury of silver trays. You can't have pizza without red sauce. Never mind. How can we fail to think in this regard of pizza, also born as a poor dish in southern Italy, which has now conquered the world and is also served in starred restaurants? The skeleton of another 3 people. There were 3 people in the last piece. The skeletons of 3 people were also found near the oven in the working areas of the home. In recent weeks, a culture ministry statement added, the eruption of Mount Vesuvius is in AD 79, buried Pompeii in ash. By the way, Andy, I'm going to be asking you a question in a moment, and it's not to do with this, so get your mic ready. Freezing the city and its residents in time. The site has been a rich source of archaeologists, since its discovery in the 1500s. The site is only about 40 miles from the city of Naples, the modern home of the UNESCO protected Italian pizza. So they've got pizzas protected in Italy now. Right, okay, next, the lecture, the big lecture, the one that's going to go on for hours, right? Okay, so here we go. Now, the question is, Andy, what site we doing? Andy,
Scarabray.
it's in the south, Andy. Fail, right? You don't have another chance, right? Which site are we doing, Pat? You've been there. Right, okay. Let's try another image.
Yeah.
Which site are we doing this week?
Kennington Longbarrow.
Did you say Kennington?
Kennington.
Close.
Close.
It begins with a K. Come on, please. We've seen it's near Silbury Hill. Nobody looked this up on the internet. Come on. It's the one. Now I can see somebody rattling papers and looking through a book. Margaret would know straight away. Okay, one last image. No. Oh no, I gotta do it all again. This is in Wiltshire. It's near Avebury, right? It's near Silbury Hill, right? Andy was so close. It's known as the West Kennet Longbarrow.
Ah, Kennet. Right, it was Kennet. Yeah.
You were so close, Andy. So close. In fact, you got a great big hug from Drina for that. So why not? I tell you what. What we'll do, we'll flick through a load of images, and then what we've got is like a scratch and sniff article, right? So it's one of those pieces that I sort of jump into, click on an image, and it opens up, and then we sort of discuss that and so on. But West Kennet Longbarrow for me is everything that the Neolithic Bronze Age is. It's a burial chamber. obviously in the Neolithic period were obsessed with the word burial chamber. And this is a very, very interesting structure. And lots of human remains have been found in this chamber, right? More human remains than in most long barrows from the Neolithic period. So it's a very, very intriguing site. And in fact, we've got bones at West Kennet Long Barrow that predate the construction of the barrow. That's an interesting thing. I'll say that again. We've got bones that have been found at this site that predate its construction. In other words, bones were carried around for actually hundreds and hundreds of years before being deposited in this site. And it's been, there's been repair work and reconstruction work on it as well. And you got the look of algae there and all the rest of it. And you've got some really, we'll sort of, this is the piece that we're going to look at. So what I've done now is you'll see these images a bit bigger. So this is the entrance of it. And one of the things about this site, it looks there you go inside looking out to the entranceway and those big stones looking out passage to these big stones. So this is on the outside, and there they are. It's a little family of stones. So it's a really interesting site, and for me, it's a very powerful landscape, and it sort of says everything about the Neolithic period. And one thing that I do make a habit of doing when we go and visit this site is that we park at the car park, and you've got about around under a kilometre to walk. So you park at the car park, and you can't see the barrow from the car park because the car park is below it. So you walk along a path and you can't see this barrow, you can't see it, and you go up a slope and you still can't see it, and you keep wandering up a slope, and then suddenly in the distance you can see the mound, the length of the mound, and interestingly enough, that would have been cladded in chalk and nodules of flint, but you could see it from a distance, a longer distance. So in other words, this is on the top of a hill. So if you look on from the north to the south, this is south, and if you look, you can actually see it but when you get close to it, you can't. The next point is, when we think about the Neolithic period, we think about mysticism, we think about the line of sight being distorted, and we think about other things which are far greater than astronomy or solstices and so on. And it's their connection with the landscape. And sometimes when we talk about bodies and human remains, it sometimes really distracts us from the actual overall push for them to allow us to translate what they were doing. And in many ways, this monument is culturally to be seen for thousands of years, even through today. There's a tree at the bottom of the hill, car park, open field, tree, and then you go up a slope. Always go there in the summer, not in the winter, otherwise you need Wellington boots. There's a little stream below. And there's something known as the sanctuary nearby as well. You've got lots of rags and stuff tied around this well, which is towards the west. And you see this tree that I'm talking about, and lots of people have put ribbons in it and shoes. You can buy you can get people have put whole sets of brand new shoes there. I went there to get a pair of shoes once. Couldn't get a pair, but it's just a really weird. In other words, what we're saying, people still connect with this site. It's very, very, very special. And when people talk about Stonehenge, I get very angry when people talk about Stonehenge, because it's almost as if Stonehenge is the only piece of Neolithic prehistoric Britain that people like to talk about and go to. And this site, like Avebury and looking at Silbury Hill, and even Castlereagh, and even the likes of Pen Iphone in West Wales, even the likes of Maes Howe, they've all got a sort of special awareness within the landscape of the Neolithic period. And what we've got is that this is by what we've got is work by Aubrey and Stukely. Aubrey from the 1600s, Stukely in the 1700s, basically saying, hey, you know, you've got this monument. Maybe this is maybe an exaggerated form of what these antiquarians once saw or felt, or maybe it's correct, and that those stones that you can actually see in that sketch are no longer visible in the form that you're actually seeing this, other than the ones at the front. So things have changed. The landscape and the fabric of time has changed. And those that have been to my classes following the line will understand that the fabric of time does change. Time alters, erosion, people moving stones, people seeing history and archaeology in various different ways. But the main thing is that we do have is the monuments and the fabric of these monuments that do tell us about this past, even though it's been mistranslated and altered by others. And excavation work and mutations of change within archaeological sites, not very helpful, but sometimes you can look at these sites and maybe squint and get an idea. One of the things I said last night to Pat and my little gang on a Monday evening, looking at some the inference that we get from archaeological sites throughout Wales through 5 different classes, was that when you ever go to sites like this, don't look at the signage. Well, obviously the signage to tell you where these are, but don't actually look at the plans. Don't look at what it says, because these are prehistoric sites. And other than the archaeological findings, everything on those descriptions is more or less hearsay. And you can read them afterwards, but by visiting these sites as a complete virgin, you get that full experience. And there's no pun intended, but you'll understand what I'm saying as well at the same time. And again, an idea inside these stones from the outside, and this sort of fixing this monument within the landscape, and fixing this within the landscape to get from those historians from the 1700s, Stukely, and the likes of Aubrey. And what you have is West Kennet Long Barrow. There's East Kennet Long Barrow there as well. It's now gone, sadly. And one of the things that I will say, and it's something that is always missed, very subtle. When you go to Avebury and you follow the road on the right-hand side, there's actually a road which cuts through the West Kennet Avenue, and you go down to where it's got West Kennet. Look at the village of West Kennet on the left-hand side, and you've got ancient cob walls. You've got earthen walls that have got thatch on them, and it's just thinking, I've used the word ancient, but then again, earth is ancient, isn't it? And you think they're building things in earth and they're building things in stone, and you've got these subtle clues. And going to these types of sites, I said go to these places in the summer, right? But go to these places when it's pouring down, right? So you don't get the tourists going to these places. Don't go to them when the sun's up, because Avebury is chock-a-block with buses and stuff, and you won't be able to get the experience. Again, gaining an idea of the flow of this landscape. These 2 avenues leading to Avebury, Silbury Hill, that great sort of megalithic earthen mound, which is a play on words. And there you go, the Long Barrow of West Kennet, Roman Road, interesting. And what we do with this really interesting piece is that we look at these sort of images. And what I'm going to do is I want to give you a little bit of information before we actually go on to this wonderful piece that I found on the net. So I've got the text, and we just sort of click in and look at the images, big screen, which will be a nice little bit of a treat. So the antiquarian John Aubrey described West Kennet Long Barrow in his manuscript, Monumenta Britannica. When was John Aubrey writing? Latter part of the 1600s. There he stated that the barrow did not have a name, also providing an illustration of it. It was again described and illustrated the following century by antiquarian William Stukely. Stukely named it the South Long Barrow. It's been known as West Kennet Long Barrow.
I was going to
No,
say,
it
you
hasn't.
stopped talking.
Say that, Pete?
You went silent for a bit. I was beginning to wonder what happened.
I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm sounding very soft.
I remember going to that
Go
the
on,
West Kennet Long Barrow with you.
beautiful sight, isn't it?
It is.
I think you may have missed us there when you put your mic on, Pete. That's probably what happened. But you know, I'm when we went there, it was like it was like going somewhere else. And you moved between this big stone in front, and you would go, and there were chambers on the left, chambers on the right, and this big chamber in the end. And when you think about the likes of William Stukely and John Aubrey before him, saying that there's not really a name, one of the things I said last night is that you've got to be very careful with names for places. Sometimes when you go to the Gower and you've got Arthur's Stone, I mentioned this last night, Arthur's Stone, but the stone has nothing to do with King Arthur, right? And that's a very interesting point. West Kennet is nothing to do with West Kennet because the village of West Kennet didn't exist back then. So you've got to be very careful with names of places. Where sometimes we get over obsessed with the meanings for names, and which is a bit of a shame, really. So Stukely, then the ideas of Stukely move on. In 1814, the Long Barrow was reported on by the antiquarian Richard Cole amid his descriptions of the archaeological sites in Wiltshire, first being recorded. And interestingly enough, the site has been excavated loads of times, loads and loads of times. And lots of what I'm going to tell you now, we will be repeating, right? There's a plan. It gives you an idea of the length of this mound. Really, really long length of mound, actually. And when we think about the contents and we think about there's spirals on the stone in there. You got the when you think about this sort of green hue to the stones. I don't know if this is the same green hue that we actually find in Carnieni in Cornwall. I don't know if it's the same, because what's happened, it's been sort of tapped over and roofed over since. But if we get sort of a bit of an overview, in the autumn of 1859, John Thurnham carried out an excavation at West Kennet Long Barrow under the auspices of the Wiltshire Archaeological and Natural History Society. That had only been going a few years, actually. He had previously excavated at other sites, and our friend John Thurnham is one of those guys who's very much into skulls, if you can remember, right? And we mentioned him in the barrow diggings. In excavating at West Kennet, Thurnham used patients from a mental asylum as labourers, presenting it as a form of occupational therapy for them. I had no idea I was going to read those lines out. But when you think about it, that mentioned there that this site was excavated by mental asylum patients as therapy, occupational therapy. I think that's cute because when we think about Operation Nightingale that was established between the Gulf Wars, that uses archaeology as occupational therapy today. Very interesting that we've got that. And Thurnham, our friend John Thurnham, excavated the western chamber. So if we go here, right? So we've got north, east, west, western chamber, the one at the end there, in which he discovered bones from what he believed were 6 crouched inhumation burials. So you crouch yourself together. In 2006, it said in 2006 that Thurnham's recording remains haphazard and arbitrary by modern standards, as do some of his interpretations. Although added, there is examination and recording the skeletal material is more thorough than was typical previous. So Thurnham was very much interested in the bone collection here, and that leads me to sort of maybe say something else. And I think the scale is slightly out there. I don't think the stones are that big. But if we sort of go through, that was a complete pot found there, right? Now, Thurnham's work at the back, right? And you've got the other arrangements of bones, right? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to question myself. I've been saying that the Professor Colin Richards, who was of Manchester, now University of Highlands and Islands, he said that he believes that most of the evidence says that most of these so-called burial chambers were used for burial at the later stages of their being or existence. In some cases, it might be that they were used for burial chambers for a much longer period of time. In regards to West Kennet Long Barrow, were they purposely built as burial chambers? That's a really big question. And it could be said that maybe 1 or 2 were, maybe most of them weren't. And the reason why lots of archaeologists believe that they weren't initially built as burial chambers, most of them. And if we think about what we said with the Tomb of the Eagles the other week, when we're thinking that's a really sort of narrow entrance, how do you get bodies and so on back in there over a long period of time, and all that sort of gubbins that we mentioned the other week. And because the earliest deposition layers in lots of these, there's no human bones. And you'd think if it's been used for a burial chamber from day one, you'd found human bones in the earliest layers. But that's not always the case. So maybe this was a purposely built burial chamber. Maybe it wasn't. Interesting. One of the things in archaeology is to try and correct yourself, and to try and maybe say that not all in archaeology is what we think it is, when we again talk about the likes of hunter-gatherers, and we talk, we think, well, they always say that these people in the Neolithic period are hunter-gatherers, and we think, well, no, they actually weren't, and they actually lived, or they moved around, and not everything, it doesn't fit all. That's what I'm saying. And this was a complete beaker pot that they actually found at the site, a complete beaker pot. So this means that they are depositing into this site in the Bronze Age, and they do deposit into this site in other periods in time as well. And so when we use the word Neolithic for these monuments, we are wrong in the assumption that they were just used for the Neolithic period 5,000, 6,000 years ago. Some were used even into the medieval period. Very interesting that, because that's the evidence that we find. Lots of people excavating these sites. The problem is when they're excavating these sites from other periods in time, they disregard the evidence. So say, for example, somebody says, right, Peter, we're looking for Neolithic evidence, right? So Pete says, oh, I found a bit of medieval pottery here. Check it out. Oh, Carl, found a bit of Roman pottery here. Not interested. Check it out. Oh, found a bit of Iron Age. Check it out. Oh, we found a bit of Bronze Age now. Check it out. So then Peter says, oh, I found this. All right, then we'll keep that, right? And then we found these bones from the late Neolithic period. We'll keep them as well. So in other words, overnight we've altered the time frame. We're basically saying it was only used in the Neolithic and the Bronze Age, but Pete did actually show me evidence for the periods. That's the problem. That is the problem. And we might actually have bones from other periods in here as well, which may have been misinterpreted as Neolithic and Bronze Age evidence. There you go, turned it around. And there it is. There it is. So West Kennet Long Barrow. And there you go, the Long Barrow lay-by. It's quite a small lay-by actually. You wouldn't get more than 2 buses in there. And it's a really nice site. It really, really is. And I think Pat must have seen the site and Pete when we were going on one of our trips somewhere. I think probably to Cornwall. Oh, by the way, Pete, do you want me to Pete, you've never said that there's gold veins in Cornwall to me before. There are.
What's that?
There's gold to be found in Cornwall.
Well, I wouldn't be at all surprised. It's very rich in geology.
There's actually more than one. There's actually more than one sites that have loads of gold, as in a load. Yeah, I've been looking up gold as well because I did. You know, when I mentioned that thing about a gold ring on top of one of my goat's horns, right? I did a bit of a YouTube thing on it, and doing a bit of research today anyway. And loads of load of gold to be found in Norfolk, as we know. Right. Okay. So what we're going to do now, I had planned to do this lecture from another angle, but then at the last minute I changed it because I found West Kennet Long Barrow by Silent Earth, and I thought this stuff is absolutely brilliant. And I thought, right, I can't do any better than this, so I thought, right, I'll do this, but we'll use their images, so sort of ad lib and so on. So that's where we're going to go now, and then we will have a break. So that's where we're going to be. So let's try and get into this article, right? And this is at the point that it goes wrong. And mature dates there. Oh my God, Reclaim Party. And where's the? Hang on a minute. What did I do there? It's from I actually had it in here. I actually had it lined up a minute. Oh, there it is. Good. And good. And good. So there we go. Beautiful image. Now, this is a piece that's not that old, and it's got some really good stuff in it. And we start off by saying this: the great old mound and its grey time stained stones, among which bushes of the black thorn maintain a stunted growth, commanding as it does a view of the great part of the sacred site of Avebury, has still a charm in its walled solitude. Interjection, I agree. Disturbed only by the tinkling of the sheep bell, or perhaps the cry of the hounds. Shade too is not wanting, from the north side of the barrow, occupying the space once filled by the encircling upright stones, are what are rarely seen on these downs, several ash and elm trees of 50 to 70 years growth. Not there now. One or two trees though. At the foot of the hill, half a mile away to the east, lies one of these long combes or valleys, where the thickly scattered masses of hard silicous grit or sarsen stone still simulate a flock of grey wethers. And this is what Aubrey said in the late 1600s. He also said, one might fancy to have been the scene where the giants fought with huge stones against the gods. And it goes on to say, from this chamber there can be little doubt were derived the natural slab-like blocks, so coming from nearby. So that quote itself is from, that's from John Aubrey, written by John Thurnham after his excavations in 1859 at West Kennet, Long Barrow, published in the Society of Antiquaries of London on the 15th of March, 1860. So to get an idea.
Can I ask a question before you go away from there? Oh, you've gone away.
Oh, no, we're not. We're going to go back because it's.
Oh, it's okay then. Yeah.
Go for it. Go. Chuck it in.
So,
go on.
well, I wonder whether I'm imagining it, but at the top, there appears to be a face of an old man, which looks quite, and to the right of the big stone on the right, there's what looks like a sheep or goat's head. They look so well done, you almost feel they couldn't have just arrived there, unless.
A couple of points.
I might be imagining it. Pardon?
No, a couple of points with that is that these have come. These are sarsen stones, and lots of them are glacial. So you've got the likes of weathering.
Yeah.
And
yes, and they can. Yeah, they can come to look like something, but they look so clearly an old man's face and a goat or something. I could be imagining it. It could be just something that's happened in nature, of course, but it just looked so striking looking at it.
So I got to have a go at you now, Anne. Why are you doubting yourself? Because the people in the past would have thought the same as well. They would have seen things in these stones that we don't see today because of the weathering. They would have interpreted things differently. So let's just say it as it is, right? You might think that a man's body with really muscles and great abs and so on is your type of man. Other people might think that a well-built man with a lot of fat on him is really attractive. Other people might think that somebody slim is really attractive, and then you take those figures in your mind and you look at that and you project that on a stone, right? So that's you projecting something on the stone. People in the past would have had similar thoughts, and they would have projected these things on stones. They would have read stones as you're doing now. You're reading a stone. Don't ever criticize yourself for reading a stone, because you might be right. Maybe somebody thought exactly the same, but you've got to be wary of one thing, Anne. These have been there for thousands of years. So erosion and weathering and changes and alterations, people breaking stones off, people visiting this site over a long, long period of time. You've got to be very careful with what you're seeing and what you're saying. But then at the same time, you're also saying the same things that these people said. So, don't ever disinherit your thoughts from what these people may have thought as well, except it's in a different context, different world. And, and obviously, they had different animals around them. And also the other thing as well is what you've got what you've got to do, Anne, right? We've gone off on a way off on a tangent now. What you've got to do, Anne, is you've got to think, well, goats would have looked differently than they do today, right? I don't know if I don't know if you've seen a photograph of my Boro raised sheep, right? They're tiny little things, right? I can carry them under my arm, right? Now that's a ram, right? And they were little sheep, right? So what you're seeing in your mind's eye now, your interpretation is now, right? They had other ways of looking at stones, and what you've got to do, you've got to project your minds into their minds, and then you've got to think about erosion. So there's lots of different ways of doing that. Anyway, what we've got to do is we've got to, oh, look at that. Look at that. That's the entranceway again. That's our entranceway. And you know, that's looking eastwards. That's looking eastwards. So northeastwards, eastwards. John Thurman, a doctor, a medical superintendent, we mentioned him, right? And the reason why he was using mental asylum patients is because he was the medical superintendent of the Wiltshire County Asylum. So in other words, he had an active workforce. And it's a shame we haven't got Margaret with us tonight. And obviously operation, hopefully her best tonight and everything. Hopefully we'll see her next week and so on. And Drina and Anne, you can take her out for a bag of chips. And what she used to like those classes on our barrow diggers, and one of the things that we used to talk about was that, you remember those old reverends who would go digging, and they would get their sort of congregation to go out digging for them, and they had their workmen who respected them for being a clergyman. Well, this guy actually used his mental asylum patients to do the digging. I'm loving it. Provided labour during his excavations, which were conducted to recover the human remains interred in the long barrow. Some of them, you could say this is treasure hunting for artifacts or other artifacts. But the one thing that we do know is that not all of the archaeology was removed on John Thurnham's watch. Archaeology was removed later on. Archaeology was moved before. The biggest problem with these types of sites is that we don't have all the evidence that was ever excavated there. Some people have gone there and taken things away and so on. Right? And this is one of the things with all archaeological sites, that I believe that archaeological sites should have their archaeology nearby or actually at the sites themselves. And when you're thinking about this site, you're thinking, oh, some bones were found there. Oh, but there were more bones found there, and lots of other evidence. And you've got to in some ways try to see the archaeology as archaeology. I always say that it's like a stage performance, that some work is happening, and then people forget about it, and other work is happening, it's published, and you think, oh, that's all that's happened there, when in fact that's not the case. We've got big gaps in history and archaeology, and it's like starting off watching. We all remember Dallas from the 1980s, don't we? Well, Dallas came back about 2011, 2012, I think it was. It's a bit like watching the series Dallas and not knowing anything about the Ewing brothers beforehand, and thinking this is all that this is about. And what we got to do with archaeological sites is we've got to remember that a lot more was known about these things, but it's not necessarily that we have everything today. So one of the next thing that we're going to look at would have been inspired by the likes of Aubrey and Stukely doing similar work. So we've already seen this plan. This was actually the one published in John Thurnman's work at West Kennet. And so we go and we do this, and we go here, loving these images. They're brilliant. This was the one he published, plans showing the position of the long barrow at West Kennet in relation to the circles at Avebury and Silbury Hill. And you know, in many ways, when when we see the past and we talk about individual things, history and archaeology is about the landscape. It's about the layers. It's about everything. It's about connection. It's about an endless train line stopping at different localities along a long ending journey through time. And we cannot go to archaeological sites and think that's all there is. So we've said about missing artifacts, and we've said about, had that discussion with me and Anne that was more relevant than you think. And then we link in the connections, the dots. But sometimes when you're looking at a plan like this, you believe that this is all that's in the landscape. There's more barrows than that. There might have been more avenues going into Avebury. Makes sense. There's a little village, a prehistoric village, around to the right of West Kennet, which isn't on here, that nobody knew about when they were doing this sketch. And we think and we go through this journey of the past, and it's very romantic. And in some ways, we must not lose the movement of the romanticism of the past. And you know, I was thinking only today. I must have been, I don't know, feeding some of my animals, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to go back and excavate again at Cosmeston Medieval Village and to relive the wonderful archaeological excavation that I took part in as a volunteer in the 1980s. And I actually thought, well, that archaeology was medieval. If that's another medieval site that you excavated today, why can't you get the same experience? And the answer is you can get the same experience. The past is an experience, and we've got to remember that. And we can't really be critical of what other people say about the past. It's again another page in a chapter about this rich archaeological landscape that we see all around us. As Leonard Cottrell said, why go abroad when you've got the archaeology on our doorstep? This is what we've got here. This is one of the sketches from John Aubrey, the earliest sketch of this site. Lots of it being sort of copied and enhanced by the likes of Stukely. John Aubrey with the early sketches to the end of the 1600s. John Aubrey is a gentleman scholar. He offered us a great deal in the way of projecting a past in the 1600s. And that's another thing as well, is the 1600s, when John Aubrey was writing about this site and sketching this site, was okay, my maths, 330, 340 years ago when he was doing these sketches, that's history now. But to him, it was new. And he had no idea of the dates, and he had no idea of what Thurman would be excavating in the 1800s. So in archaeology is about updating all the time. And when we look at the Neanderthal stuff, and you know, from something else, we're updating what we know all the time. And one thing that I'm probably talking passionately today, or very, very calm and very focused and concerted in what I'm saying, is that Aubrey said this: far more for the preservation of history than for its own legacy. Right? Interesting. Caring far more for the preservation of history than for his own legacy. He wanted to record history than as an ego trip, right? Lots of us do it. I've done it. We've done archaeology for an ego trip. You know, we've done things to build up a reputation or not so. And but Aubrey was there. John Aubrey was there to actually offer us the past. Sketched in 1660, this is produced, and what you can clearly see is that it's almost as if there's more stones around it, and there's more to this site than there is today. And you know, it's being in that sense, and it's being again trying to understand what they were seeing, understanding what they thought. And you know that little discussion that me and Anne had, as they keep saying, there's more to that. That's Anne's thoughts, right? This is my thoughts. This is John Aubrey's thoughts. We've all got a contribution on the past. And Anne, I'm being critical about you. You said that you knew nothing about history before all this, and and you're learning things and so on. It's great that you're learning, and it's great that you're making a contribution. You always knew these things. It's just that we're now putting them into practice, which is very good, which is brilliant. So if we look again at another sketch, and this one here, hang on, and this is more of our work here, and this is this is more work by John Aubrey, and this is actually showing other sites, other barrows that are no longer with us today. So he was out there wanting to make a record, wanting to show us a record, wanting to show us of other monuments. Again, it's not just about this one site that we're looking at today. It's about all these other sites, and some of these sites are no longer with us today. You know, they're gone. They've been removed from time, but recorded by John Aubrey, who wanted to make a record. He wanted to tell us something. He wanted to give us something. He wanted to offer us something of the past. And this is what all this is about. Looking at this, the past is coming to us, and it's for us to try and connect with it. Sometimes people say that archaeology is about making up history and sort of coming up with theories and stuff. It's not. We've got the bits, we've got the stones, we've got the banks, and we've got the ditches, and we've got the mound, and we've got the bones and pottery and so on. William Stukeley, the other historian to come along, making obviously observations, and John and then you've got other people talking about what other people said about these sites. So John Thurneman, again, back in 1860, he wrote about William Stukeley's work in the 1720s. Stukeley's large view taken from the south shows stones and other monuments associated with it. And it's said again, right? So this is somebody else, and we're back to this, right? And John Thurneman writes that Aubrey, 60 years previously, said that those stones did exist, and it's likely that they were removed and to create walls and sort of stepping stones and so on. So they existed. So the one thing that we do have, those stones are recorded back in the 1600s, 1660. They're no longer there now. So these little plans, no matter how accurate, no matter how sort of blasé they are, this is important evidence to say that there was more at West Kennet Long Barrow than there is today. So what we're going to do, we're going to tell you a little bit about the excavation at the site. So it might be wise to go to one of the sketches of this site. So it might be wise to sort of go back to at some of the other bits and pieces that we've actually got. So I'm just going to get myself back together again. Okay, and we're going to go back out, and that's what we're going to do. Bingo. Right, so what we need is a plan. Well, can't use these. Let's go for a plan. Let's go out, and if we go to here, and we need a plan. Okay, there we go. Should we do that one? Okay, I think we'll do that one. Okay. So the entranceway, that's looking eastwards, and bottom of the screen eastwards, north of the screen westwards. At the time of John Thurman's excavation, the Long Barrow was owned by a Reverend Ash of Chippenham, Wiltshire, and permission was not given to move any stones on the surface. Excavations located only the westernmost chamber of the 5 known, and in his own words, the excavation of the chamber leading to discovery of 6 human burials is as follows. Now, you can just quickly say that where are the bones? They're gone, because this is Thurman's excavations. These are the excavations of somebody else later on. So it goes on to say, it says as follows. So you go, if you think about that ground plan, and you've got the westernmost chamber in relation to those other 4 chambers. And obviously Thurman didn't know any of this when he was excavating. Other than that chamber there that's top of the screen, the floor of the chamber and gallery consisted of the gravelly clay, which here forms the natural subsoil, and the upright stones, which had been sunk a foot or 2 in the earth, were supported by small blocks of sarsen stone closely rammed down in the earth. Both the gallery and chamber were filled with chalk rubble, covered at the top at the depth of about a foot with recent rubbish. You know, I'd like to know what that recent rubbish was. Which had found its way under the capstones. In a clearing out of the gallery, so the gallery running down there, run down the gallery to the chamber, a few scattered bones of animals, flakes and knives and of flints, and fragments of British pottery. So obviously, we're not really sure of the dates there. What dates for the British pottery? He said of various patterns were picked up. Oh God, I'd love to know all that detail. If we had a tray in front of me, I'd be able to give you an idea, but we haven't. There were also part of common bone pins. He says rube bone pins, and single bead of Kimmeridge shale, roughly made by hand. So this itself is a wonderful, more of a modern plan, right? Let's go to the plan of Thurman and see what he shows of the site. So let's go back in, and actually I think we're going to need a break as well. So otherwise I could keep going and forget where the hell I am. Right, so we'll go there, we'll go there, and hang on a minute. And where's this plan? Hang on, we're missing a plan. Oh, there it is. There it is. Oh, there it is. That's Thurman plan. Okay, so okay, we're missing the 4 chambers, right? So this is his ground plan, and this is him talking again. Going to the chamber. There we go. At the depth of 5 feet in the chamber and extending slightly into the gallery. There we go. Gallery on the right. Was a layer 3 to 9 inches in thickness of a blackish, sooty, and greasy-looking matter. We keep coming across this word greasy. We've come across that a few times in the barrow digger stuff. Mixed with the rubble and most marked on the south side of the chamber. So there we go. We can work out the south there. The blackish stratum is using the word strata. Great. The nature and origin of which are by no means clear, was so defined that it could never have been disturbed since its original formation or deposit. That's interesting. That very point is interesting. No real signs of anyone else digging there. Now, that's an interesting point. At this level, the flint flakes and implements and bones of animals were much more numerous than above. The bones were nearly all those of animals likely to have been used for food. The sheep or goat, ox of a large size, roebuck, of which there was a part of a horn, and swine of various ages, including boars with tusks of large size. There were also some of the bones of a badger, an animal still sometimes eaten by the peasantry. Right now, we're liking all that, right? Really good description. We're gonna have a break now, right? But the mention of a badger, it could have actually just crawled in there and died. But he's made the presumption, he's basically saying, you know, they ate badger, right? But you don't actually come across badger being eaten, do you? But maybe they did. Maybe they did. So what we're going to actually do now, we're going to take a break. It's still a bit to go. It's really, really nicely descriptive. There's really nice stuff to go through. But what we can do is get out of there. Get out of there. Oh, go. And what we need to do is, that's rather interesting, isn't it? The westernmost chamber at West Kennet Long Barrow looking very different from when it was excavated in 1859. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a break now, and you know, I've been going on for a bloody long time. Do you know what? I started talking, other than Peter's rude interruption, at 7:44, and I haven't stopped since. So there you go. Let's see if there's anything anyone would like to say. And what we're going to do is start off with Anne. And why not? Let's have Anne. We can't hear her. Can we?
No, I'm not. I'm thinking. I'm sort of what I could contribute, because there's been a lot, you know, there that.
First thing in your mind, go on, check it out. Go on. Top of your head.
Well, it's sort of interesting that the diagrams show the stones around, and then they're not there, and there's all sort of questions that come with almost anything you see when there's a change. Who and what and why, and I don't know. I don't really understand it in the sense, except I can see things have changed.
Yeah, you do understand.
Which is going to happen all the time anyway, isn't it?
You do understand it. What you are saying is what you're seeing today is not what they saw in the 1600s. And what you're seeing today. So in other words, the point that you've just made is very important. So you're standing there with Adam, right? And you're saying to Adam, this is how it's always looked. You're lying.
Yeah.
You're lying, right? But this is what all archaeologists usually say. Well, not all archaeologists, most are. This is what it looked like. No, it didn't. It did not look like that at all, right? And you've got to be very careful. This is why I'm saying don't look at the reconstructions, look at them afterwards. Good point. Right, okay. Right, who have we got now? Let's have wonderful Adam.
Hello. I was
Thanks
interested when you mentioned about the bones that are there that are predated the site. I was just wondering, do we know how much they predated the site by? So that's really interesting.
Well, actually, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to dig in my James Dyer book now, and I'm going to see if I can find it. It should be ingrained. And actually, what I might do is, whilst you guys are actually asking questions, I can multitask. So I'm just going to have a quick look. So, right. So, if you haven't got any other questions, you're going to ask somebody else, right? And we're going to see if anyone else has got a question at this minute. So, right. If you haven't got anything else to say, Adam, I'm going to ask Andy. What would you like to say?
I was going to ask the same thing, actually. They intrigue me too.
Right. Okay. I might need
And the
I
other,
might
sorry, I
need-
was
go
going
on.
to say, and the other thing, I was just intrigued by the shape of it. Most of these barrows are, some of them are quite a lot bigger than the actual tombs or rooms or whatever you want to call them underneath. But this only seems to have them at one end, and then it's got that great long line on it, which is really weird.
150 to 200 meters long, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
so what I'm going to do, the only way I can probably answer this question is by doing this. Right. Okay. Here we go. It was suggested that some of the West Kennet skulls might be those found in the excavation of the causeway enclosure nearby at Windmill Hill, so they've been moved. There is evidence that some burial chambers were cleaned out at various times during their active life, and this makes it difficult to assess how many corpses were deposited altogether in any particular barrow. As mentioned above, 46 burials could be accounted for at West Kennet, but we have no record of how many more were removed by other diggers. And there was actually a guy called Dr. Toop who had dug there in the 1600s, which I wasn't aware of. Like the earthen long barrows, the maximum was probably about 50. The excavation showed that West Kennet had been open and in use for about 1,000 years. During that long period of time, the central passage in the tomb had been accessible and may have been frequently entered in order to undertake various ritual functions, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, the tomb was deliberately filled with chalk, rubble and refuge, probably gathered from the adjoining barrow ditches, where the remains of feasting, they go on about that. Right. I thought that was going to come up there, but it is somewhere. It is somewhere, and I thought I was going to pick it up on that thing then. About bones coming from other sites, and I'm just struggling to find out where this was. I thought I could get to the quote straight away then, but I haven't. So sometimes your brain doesn't get everything right. Okay, we'll see it. If I can't get it this week, I'll get it for next week. Right, Andy. We'll take a note of that. And date of West Kennet bone. And what I might do is actually, why not? Let's just Google it. Let's commit the crime. Google it. Right, Peter. Anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I'm looking at that. These things are constructed.
Yeah.
Now these people must have had a good knowledge of physics.
Yes.
And the knowledge of the mechanical advantage of levers and things to be
Yes.
able to construct these things.
Yes.
So they were far better educated than we believe.
And even far better educated than lots of people today.
Yep.
And it's just they when you think about it, we gather our thoughts, and sometimes we just think, how did they do this? But they did. They somehow did it. And
they did it, so they must have had the knowledge to do so.
Yes. Yeah, they did have the knowledge, definitely.
And a great deal of creativity, which often is missing, I think, in some of what we do today. I mean, we do pursue it, but they must have had a lot of creativity to find out how, when they wanted to do something, when the terrain was different and the land was different. There were a lot of problems to overcome in doing anything. So I should think their creativity was quite good.
And obviously, yeah, today you think, oh yeah, they could move stones along there because there's no crops in the field and there's no trees and so on, right? But you've just said it. It is more incredibly difficult back then.
Yeah.
To do this, right? And yeah, that's a very, very good point. Very, very good point. Right, so okay then, I've actually ended up on Wikipedia, to be honest, which is fine. Pat, I might be able to find it here. So Pat, anything you'd like to say, lovely?
No, thank you.
Okay, and who else we got left then, Gina?
Was it built on ground, or did they dig down?
It was built basically probably directly on previous agricultural land.
Oh, right, okay. Now I'm just
Got-
wondering,
Dominating a hill.
the old question, how did they get it? How did they build it with the weight of the stone? That's all.
Ah, right, subsiding into the earth and all the rest of it. Yeah. They would have been aware of all these factors, as Peter said. They were incredibly intelligent people.
Yeah.
They were.
Yeah.
They were. Right. I am aware that Pat's probably gonna. Oh God. Pat's gonna say she's gonna leave at 1:30, and we haven't had a break yet, and it's 9:17. But we'll have a very short break today. To be honest with you, we'll have a 5-minute break because I'm not going anywhere now. Just I'll put the kettle on and have a break. Right, Pat. Anything you'd like to say quickly?
No.
Okay. Right, folks. We're going to take a break. Yes. And I'm not going to take any more time, because if I use up time now to find that, I'm gonna use up my break. So I'll get the answer for the date of that bones. It's more than one site next week. It's going to be a bluestone thing, isn't it? Oh my God! I start finding one bluestone and I find 1,000. Right? Okay. Well, I will do my best. Okay. We'll take a break quickly. I think we're more or less ready now, aren't we? Except most people are still having a break somewhere. Pat, you'll have to come and see the Indiana Jones film with me. I'm getting a little gang together. Don't worry, I'll only wear my brown hat with my whip. There's nothing to be worried about.
Is there a new one?
Yeah, the next Indiana Jones film is out on the 28th, which is now, isn't it? It's I'm excited. It's the last. Obviously, Harrison Ford is like 600 years old in it, but he is, isn't it?
No way.
And basically, we found out that Harrison Ford had a daughter. So yes way. This is the man who inspired. Actually, when I used to say I was an archaeologist, that's how I used to get my dates.
Brilliant.
Because the women used to say, "Oh, what, like Indiana Jones?" Yeah, that was it.
Nice.
It hooked them in every time. Peter tried it, but it didn't work.
Is his daughter playing the main lead then?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you've got to have a bit of totty in it, haven't you?
Yeah, of course. There's only so much acrobatics you can expect Harrison Ford to do now.
Yeah, he did practically. He did all his own stunts in the first film.
What good film?
Including the stunt where he was holding the German truck underneath, right?
Yeah.
And the only thing that they did was to dig out a gully underneath him, right? Other than that, he held onto the vehicle underneath.
Bloody hell.
He
Fair
did
play.
his own stunts, yeah. Which is quite amazing. Right, okay then. Right. Pat, are you gonna be with us for a little bit longer tonight? Are you what are you doing?
I'm gonna try.
Right, okay. Do you know last night we obviously had Roger. So next week we got Lawrence, who is actually 5 times worse than Roger. So it's going to be one of the most and when you got Roger and Lawrence in the class, which will be the following week, it's going to be a comedy act throughout the whole thing. And Roger, the problem is with Roger, you couldn't really hear his voice last night, which is a bit of a shame. So he's got a new computer, so that's going to be pretty good. He was very pleased that Peter wasn't in the class. Oh, sorry, I should have said that. Well, are we still
You
waiting
should
for
come and sit
Andy?
on my settee.
Oh, yeah. Oh, go on. Tell him all about the toilet roll. Go on, please. Yeah, you got to get this, Peter. Tell him about the toilet roll. Go on.
Well, he would always turn the toilet roll around because I hung it on with the free end hanging down the back. He didn't like that, so he'd always take it off and turn it around and put it up the other way.
So every time Peter did that deliberately, just to
Yeah.
wind Roger around. Right, we are going to get started. I know we're waiting for Andy, but we're gonna crack on anyway. But Andy will be able to catch up anyway. So let's share again, and I've got to get back into the mood. I've got to try and get back into the mood I was in. Right, so let's try and hook into that. We will try and finish at a sensible time tonight anyway. So. Okay. Right. So what I need, and the other thing as well, this is descriptions rather than sort of a layered plan, which is not something that Thurnham would have offered us. So what I'm going to do this description, but I'm going to widen it. So let's see where we can go with this. Right. So we're going to do the description, and I'm going to try and add a bit of archaeology to it at the same time. Right, so you can imagine this is the westernmost chamber at West Kennet. And what we need, again, is one of those plans. So let's just go to a plan, right? Back to this again. Gives you an idea. This is not one that was prepared by John Thurnham. So beneath the black stratum, you can imagine this sort of black layer, this sort of mixy with flecks of charcoal, with sort of flecks of burnt soil, with even sort of almost almost flecks of organic material, so beneath this was a chalk rubble. So chalk rubble, it says of a dirty white color. So you can imagine it's like white, but sort of browny, sort of black. It's sort of dirty, extended to a depth of 2 feet. So this really big sort of thick layer, this sort of chunky thick layer. This is in the back chamber there. In this were found 4 human skeletons. 4 human skeletons. Now, it's John Thurnham. He was an osteological specialist. He liked bones and so on. How complete these sets of human remains were is debatable. If we look at what was said of his work by later archaeologists and parts of 2 others, all resting on the floor of the chamber. The exact position in which the bodies had been deposited was by no means evident. So, in other words, they were disarticulated. They were moved around. They were sort of a bit of bone there, a bit of skull from another person there, a bit mixed up. They were disarticulated. So, where's this crouch thing come from? How do we know that they were crouched? So, you know, so the exact position in which the bodies had been deposited was by no means evident. The bones, it says, without being scattered, were further apart than usual. So they were mixed, they were disarticulated, they were altered, as if the chalk rubble had fallen down gradually on the decaying bodies and separated the bones. Well, I find that a bit difficult to believe, but there you go. Now, it says back to there, it sort of talks about the chamber, right? It angles us to the chamber, right? So what I might do to make this a little bit more evident, right, is actually go back to John Thurnham's plan to try and get an idea. We're trying to get into the archaeology here. We're trying to understand what he's talking about, right? And then when you go in the chamber one day, you can sort of, oh, that's where that happened over there, right? So if we go back to his plan, hang on a minute, where's his little plan? A minute, we've got to get his plan. Oh, did we have it just then? There we go. There it is. So back to this. So we're getting an idea. So south is the bottom of the screen, and obviously never eat shredded wheat. So east is on the right of the screen. So there you go. You can work it out. So in the southeast angle of the chamber, to the left of the entrance, was the skeleton of a youth of about 17 years of age, apparently in a sitting posture. Now, after what he just said, they were slightly disarticulated. How the friggin' hell did he know that? Right? The skull was extensively fractured at the summit by what appeared to have been the death blow. Well, all right, he's assuming too much, okay? The thigh bones measured about 16.5 inches. So that's a nice length. So 16.5 inches. That's so that's your femur, isn't it? Your thigh bone, your femur. So there we go. The crowns of the large teeth were slightly eroded, better than mine, and the wisdom teeth had not penetrated the gums. So obviously, maybe a little bit before 17. Behind this skeleton and in the very angle of the chamber was a pile of pottery fragments. Now, were these pottery fragments to do with the body? Did they date? Did they come from the time of the body? What's going on? Wow, we've got pottery though. So were the bones? The thing is, when you think about this, let's get really excited about this. When you think about this, there's 6 bodies found in this main chamber, 6. Right, and we're told if we look at James Dyer that we're nearly 50 bodies found throughout the whole thing. Now, if this space itself is occupied by 6 sets skeletal remains, then obviously the other 4 chambers that there's more than just 6 in them each. And you're thinking, well, but bloody hell, that's a bit of a waste of space, you know, when you're thinking. But we also have the other work of other people digging there as well, which wasn't evidenced when we started this. So almost in the center of the floor was the skeleton of a man of about 50 years of age, of large and powerful frame, a bit like me, really. The humerus, 13 inches, and the thigh bone, 20 inches in length. Well, a humerus is your arm bone, your chunky arm bone. That's your humerus, right? Thigh bone, your femur. It's saying was 20 inches in length. So what's mine here? So 20, my thigh bone's a bit longer, so I'm a bit probably taller than this bloke. The teeth were very much eroded and the bones thick and heavy. So, stocky guy. A fracture, probably the death wound, extended from one temple to the other, through the forehead into the right cheek, and entirely severing the malar bone, which had fallen off below the skull. Malar bone, malar, M-A-L-A-R. Now, osteologically, I don't know which bone that is. It's obviously given another name, which had fallen off below the skull. Is the malar bone the lower mandible? Anyway, I'm lost on that one. Sorry. And was preserved by the clay in which it was embedded. So I'm thinking that this guy is saying that some of the bones weren't that well preserved. Because this other bone that had fallen off was ivory-like hardness, contrasting strongly with the light, friable character of the bone from which it had been separated. The skull, somewhat large and flat, was of an elongated oval form. Now, elongated oval form, right? Long barrow, isn't it, Andy? So obviously, if it was round, if it was a round skull, it would be from a Bronze Age barrow, an elongated skull from a long barrow. That's the theory, folks, anyway, if we go back to the barrow diggers. The skull, so there we go. Number 3, we're going to go with body number 3. Let's do body number 3, right. Behind the last and near the southeast corner of the chamber, right, so southeast, so there we go. We know where the southeast is on there, so we're following this very well. Was the skeleton of a man of medium stature from 30 to 35 years of age. Let's just believe these ages of Thurman. Let's not just doubt them. The skull, which bears no marks of injury. Now, he's saying that the other 2 skulls had evidence of injury, right? But he also told us earlier on, didn't he, that the evidence of the chalk tells us that the bones had been disarticulated because there'd been a collapse in there. But where is the chalk collapse from? It can't have collapsed from the ceiling because that would have been stone, right? So is it the damage on the bones to do with this being filled in? Or coming through holes in the side of the chamber? All those questions. The lower jaw was found at distance of a foot or more from the skull and at a lower level. Do you want me to give you my thing? They found badger bones in there. So that might indicate that the badgers had used it as a set. And maybe they had disarticulated the bones. Makes sense? What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make this less Hollywood. So, but then again, if you want to make it Hollywood, let's just go and see the Indiana Jones film, Drina. You can bring Idris if you want. He's paying for the ice cream. In the northwest angle of the chamber was a skeleton of a man of middle size, about the same age as the last. So these were all male. The legs were flexed against the north wall. Extended. The thigh bone measured 17 3/4 inches. So, okay, I'm gonna guess that this individual is probably 20s, 30s, something like that. But does he tell us? The skull faced the west, and the lower jaw was found about a foot nearer to the center of the chamber, lower mandible, as if it had fallen from the skull in the process of decay. Now, is he saying that these bodies rested with their backs against the chamber? Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. This is not the purpose of long barrows. The purpose of long barrows is to collect bones and put them in the long barrow. So these must indicate later burials, right? That's what I'm seeing as a layman. Well, I'm not a layman, I'm an archaeologist, but that's not the point. So here we go. And these being embedded in the clay floor, the jaw was singularly well preserved, of an ivory whiteness and density like the other jaw from one of the other bodies, and even retained distant traces of the natural oil. Okay, fair enough. So there you go. The form of the skull is decidedly elongated and narrow oval. For God's sake, is it elongated or right? Okay, elongated, offering much from the usual ancient British skulls from the circular barrows of Wiltshire and Dorset. All of its characteristics are more marked, but it bears a singular resemblance, especially in the face, to skull number 3, and like that presents no marks of violence. Okay, this thing about violence, he's just making too much sort of, play on violence. You don't need violence to kill you, guys. You can just die. Hollywood. Lying over this skull was a small slab of sarsen stone, and beneath this, 2 fragments of a fine and peculiar black pottery, neatly marked with lattice lines. And do you know what we're going to do? We're going to see that piece of pottery now. You didn't think you're going to get this detail today, did you? There it is. There it is. Love it. Bit of pottery. So it's saying we've got a sarsen stone, and beneath this, 2 fragments of a fine and peculiar black pottery, neatly marked with lattice lines, corresponding fragments of which were found in a distant part of the chamber. So there we go, lattice lines. Now, that's interesting because this is probably later rather than Neolithic. Near the skull, and near the skull was also a black flint. But appreciate this piece of pottery, right? This is like, this pottery is to do with the skeletal remains of the 4th body. And, obviously maybe it was in the 30s or something. We don't have a date there. But also found near the skull was a curious implement of black flint, right? And there's the black flint. A sort of circular knife with a short projecting handle, the edges elaborately chipped. Now, that may have been mounted or hafted, maybe a miniature axe, or it was mounted as an arrow, or it may have been carried as part of a lighting kit, or so and so, whatever. But there's one thing that we need to say: these objects that we're seeing are only some of the artifacts that may have been with these individuals, right? And the problem is now is that Thurman's gone off on a tangent. So this skeleton with this knife and with the pottery and with a sarsen slab on top of it, which doesn't say this is Eric. He says that this skeleton was perhaps that of a chief for whose burial this chamber and tumulus were erected, and in honor of whom certain slaves and dependents were immortalized with the chief. The problem is what he's saying, right? He's basically saying that 2 people were buried in there, and the 2 other people were killed. That's the evidence, and this is what this is about, which is wrong, which isn't correct. However, as we've gone off on a tangent, right? What we then have is the remains of 2 other people, right? 2 other people in here, right? And this is where we're going to go next. So we've got we've got 2 other individuals between and behind. Okay, go back to the plan again. And I'm not sure I'm going to get this done today, but we can dream. So I'm going to speed up now. Between and behind the 2 last skeletons, close to the middle of the west wall of the chamber, so never each shrouded wheat on the west, on the left-hand side, were parts of the skeleton of a man of middle age, consisting of parts of the skull bone and lower jaw, bits of the vertebrae, bones of the arm. Close to these was a portion of curious saucer of coarse pottery, perforated with a series of perforated with a series of holes at the bottom. And guess what? We've got a photograph of this. Not a photograph. No, we don't. We have an illustration. Hang on. Oh, hang on. Okay. Go down. Go. Hang on a minute. We've lost it a minute. Hang on. Okay. We're going to go all the way down to the bottom of the screen, and we go to where there it is. Now that's nice. That's nice. Like it. Perforated vessel. fragment of perforated vessel. We're liking it, right? So close to these was a portion of curious saucer of coarse pottery. Now that to me is not that to me is a lot later. That's not Neolithic, definitely not. It's probably Bronze Age, probably very late. So as to form a kind of strainer, and with a hole at each side by which it might have been suspended, another fragment of the same vessel was found at the opposite side of the chamber. So we're presuming now quickly, we're presuming that these are all contemporary with the bodies. And I'm saying that they're not. I'm saying this is probably bodies date from a wide time frame from the evidence that we're finding. But he didn't know that. Very near the last and between the sides of the two upright stones forming the west wall. All right, we've got to get to the plan again so we know where we're going. Right, okay. Plan. There we go, back to the plan. So there we go. Let's go to this. Right, think. Very near the last and between the sides of the two upright stones forming the west wall. There you go, west wall. X marks the spot. It's a shame we haven't got a mark on there anyway. Was the chief part of the skull of an infant about a year old with no other part of the skeleton, but which perhaps might have been found outside the chamber, with the skull bones were 3 sharp flint flakes and a large heap of fragments of pottery, right? So we're thinking, well, okay, nothing much is being said about this, right? Nothing much more is being said about this, unfortunately. But what we're going to do, we're going to look at some of the types of pottery that they actually found in here as well. So let's go for it. And as I say, I could not have done this lecture today without this. This is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. So basically, you've got pottery like this. A third heap of pottery was found in the northeastern angle of the chamber. And listen to this: a morsel of decayed wood was picked up near this part of the floor. Hopefully this is all sort of in context and underneath all that sort of chalk and so on, which 2 skilled microscopic observers have ascertained to be oak. Here we go. And in the south, and they actually worked out, but it's sisal oak. Sisal oak is Welsh oak, so Quercus sisal and sessiliflora, as it was called then. In the southwest corner between 2 adjacent uprights was a curious ovoid sarsen stone. And this said that it's weighed nearly 5 pounds. It was tinged of a red colour from exposure to fire, was broken at one end and chipped and battered at the other. It had obviously been used as a mallet, perhaps for breaking the flints, of which the numerous flakes and knives in the chamber were found. Right, so what we need is those types of flints. There you go. A very large, so you go. A very large number of flint flakes were with sharp cutting edges were obtained from the black stratum and from near the floor of the chamber. So that's sort of above all of this. Nearly 300 were collected, but of these, perhaps 2/3 might be regarded as refuge, but clearly not as accidental. Some flint nodules, such as abound in the chalk, appear to have been broken and the resultant flakes used as knives, probably as a funeral feast on the spot. So if you're going to have a funeral feast in this chamber, you're not going to get many people in there. Pete's been in there with me, and it's not a big zone. 3 or 4 cores from which such flakes had obviously been broken off were found. I'm going to chuck in a red herring, right? Flint is naturally found in the ground around West Kennet Barrow, Long Barrow, right? So they could have just accidentally got in there when they were putting soil on top of the mound or whatever. Right, so here we go. Let's have a little more look at the pottery. Look at that. You know, we're loving it. We're loving this pottery. And you know, these are of definite worthy note. And you know what we've got. They're being incised. It's incised pottery. Loving it. And there you go. A bit of a rim. And what they're doing, they probably using a bit of a string in there. They're impressing it in to give that design. impressed pottery. And there we go. They've probably got little stamps to give this design in there. Look at those little sort of chevrons there. And it says it is worth of remark that not a bit of burnt bone or other sign of cremation was met. So fair enough. It said that the overall Thurnham examination and recording of the skeletal material is more thorough than was typically previous, and there is interpretation of the monument reveals the prevailing assumptions of the time, i.e., the thing was actually used for a chieftain, but now we know it wasn't. It was used for a community, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to chuck in a few key facts. So what we need to go back to let's just go with the aerial view. We had an aerial view, didn't we? Let's just go with that. Let's have an aerial view. There it is. Bit sort of truncated, right? So we got that. There we go. That's better. It was a lot longer than you can see there now, right? A lot longer. Because we lost a bit of the length up there in the never eat shredded wheat in the west. So it says facts about West Kennet Long Barrow. Here we go. So the mound here, I'm saying it's about 150 meters, 200 meters, right? But as it stands today, it's 340 feet long, right? So there we go. It is on an east-west axis, which it happens to be because that's how the ridge forms, right? Okay, so it should be about 70 feet wide on the bottom part of the screen and 40 feet wide on the northern part of the screen. So 40 feet wide in the west, 70 feet wide in the east. It's on a ridge of chalk down, and when you go up there, you can find bits of flint across the field, natural flint, right? So you're not taking anything. It's scheduled ancient monument, by the way, so you should just leave it there anyway. At its maximum and mutilated height, above the ground level, forget about any ditch or stones around it and so on. This was probably up to 14 feet in height, right? So that's roughly 4.5 meters in height. Besides the Sarsen stones, which are these big stones here. There you go, the Sarsen stones. There's oolite stone filling, which actually has travelled here from oolite stone, which is like a limestone fine. Oolites, the little sort of shells in it. Oolite stone. That's actually been brought from the Frome area in Somerset, or may have actually ended up glacially here. But other stone has been brought to this site, which is really interesting. It sort of brings in sort of the connection. Now, the archaeologist Stuart Pigott wrote in 1958, the plan of the burial chamber on complete excavation showed a symmetrical composition with a wide passage. Right, let's go to that plan. Okay, there we go. There it is. This bit of plan. And he basically said that we've got a passage, polygonal western chamber, 2 pairs of lateral passages as we've got. The passage opens onto a shallow semicircular forecourt. That's out the front there, south of there. The 2 pairs of lateral chambers vary in size, so there's no sort of, they look rather different. And of a maximum internal height of 2.5 meters. So what we need to do is we need to quickly go back to that other plan that we had earlier on. There it is, nice, and you can see there that they've got stones on top. A ditch once flanked the Long Barrow, directly dug into the chalk. Now, Professor Julian Richards wrote that the reconstruction work that followed the 1956 excavation resulted in a total reconstruction of the upper structure, shame, and passage above the height of the orthostats, and the Sarsen stones around the east entrance were also repositioned. Oh, bloody hell, I didn't know that. So the stones that you're looking at were actually repositioned. Oh no, I didn't know that. The Long Barrow was subsequently excavated by Stuart Pigott. He's also a guy who was involved with the work at Sutton Hoo. and his staff and students of Edinburgh University, 55-56. Professor Pigott wrote a summary of the results in the Antiquity magazine in 1958. And what we're going to do, we're going to mention that, and we're nearly at the end of the lecture, so we'll paraphrase. On more than one of the chamber uprights and on the southern of the three blocking stones were polished areas where stone or flint axe blades had been ground or resharpened. So smooth surfaces. Sherds of pottery coming from Windmill Hill, which is further north, north of Avebury. The floors of chambers and passage consist of the same old ground surface as observed under the mound, and the burials had been laid directly on this. So it was like laid directly on the original surface, in other words. As usual collective tomb burials, there were, in addition to identifiably complete or partially complete skeletons, quantities of disordered bones. So in other words, there was a mix of lots of different bones, disorganized, collected bones, you know, and so on. The remains were mainly concentrated at the end of the chambers. So when we quickly just get that image in. Where is it? There, you can see them stuffed in there, right? And it's basically saying, oh God, in a northeast chamber, a complete crouch burial of an elderly man occupied the western corner with a leaf-shaped flint arrowhead in the region of his throat. And above him, a mass of cremated bones represented two individuals, one male and one female. So cremated bones found in these, but not actually found at all by Thurman when he was excavating the other chamber, which is a chamber at the end. In the south west chamber, so if we get the orientation of the screen, hang on, that'll help. Hang on, move, orientate. Come on, orientate the screen. Quickly, good, excellent. And it basically says, so we know where these are. In the southwest chamber, a row of 3 skulls had been laid against the rear wall, and a cache of vertebrae and long bones was similarly placed in the southwest chamber. I'm starting to think that what the archaeologists are excavating is not necessarily what always existed there, you know? Oh, and I've lost a bit of the plan. Hang on a minute. Let's just go back. Let's revert to original. There, good. Let's crack on. Another archaeologist said that it is curious features in the circumstance of the West Kennet burials. In the first place, there are not enough skulls to go around, and more lower mandibles and skulls. This suggests that skulls were removed after remains were reduced to skeletal form, in some instances leaving the lower jaw behind. And still more odd is the fact that there is a similar shortage of larger limb bones, which may also have been removed from the tomb after burial. So people carried them around as curios. In southeast chamber against the west wall were the crushed remains of what were had been a complete bowl of pottery from Windmill Hill North, with a slightly thickened rim and decorated. Subsequent to the final deposition of burials, the chamber and passage were deliberately filled with irregular layers of chalk rubble, mainly clean, but with many seams and patches of rubble stained brown and black. So the mixture of stuff with pot sherds, animal bones, flint flakes, occasional implements, bone points, and other tools. And frequency, there were beads and stone and perforated shell. They just chucked everything in there. The sherds varied in size from small scraps to large fragments representing pots from over on the eastern side of Britain, like Peterborough Ware and sort of other sites. And basically it's saying that you know, the stratification was mixed, lots of different artifacts from different periods, including Bronze Age evidence. Although burnt fragments of bone were relatively common and other signs of burning and fire, no fire had been made within the tomb at any stage of the filling. So in other words, it was filled in with crap. The filling had been carried up completely to the underside of the capstones. In other words, it'd been filled. They meant business. They had filled the things and meant business, right? And on a final note, right, just a final note, what we're going to do, we're going to go back to this, have look at one more article, right? And not an article, one more image, and we've just got 2 minutes and we call it a day, right? So, okay, let's, hang on, let's go back to there. Hang on, what we're doing, come on, hang on, where are we? I want that image back, go, okay, and there. And we go to the bottom of the screen and we finish with this last image. Where is it? As anyone jumps up and down and says it's going too fast. Oh, we want this image for a reason, because this is where it finishes. Finally, in 2007, Professor Alistair Whittle, another prehistoric archaeologist, published a paper on the dating of West Kennet Long Barrow, from which the following, we've got an extract. Now, 36 individuals are represented in the primary mortuary deposits discovered during the 2 excavations. So we got the one in 1859, and we got the Stuart Piggott excavations in 1955. 31 radiocarbon dates undertaken in 2007 were taken on available bones from the individuals found in the Long Barrow. The primary mortuary deposits occurred between 3,670 years BC and 3,635 BC, a period which you can work out of 35 years. The initial, the burials that they find in there, right, dated to that date, but the burial chamber had existed before that, the dates of those burials, mixed burials. The last interment, the last bodies placed in there dated to no later than 3,610 years BC. So in other words, 5,610 years ago. So we've got precise dates. The whole thing for burials, from those 2 sets of burials, from those dates, those 36 individuals that we know of, right, date from a period of roughly 60 years and no more. The difference is between these distributions, that the primary people, it's likely that people used the first burials over about 30 years. And then when they were filling the chambers, more people were actually placed in there, right? But what we do find is that's not the end of the story with West Kennet Long Barrow. It was used by other people over various different generations, but that is another story. On that note, we're going to call that a day. Hopefully you've enjoyed the lecture today. Sorry we've had to push that in the end, but there we go. So any questions? We'll start off with, as we're coming off the screen, Anne, anything you'd like to say? And
well,
then Pat.
yeah, one of the things that, we've seen a lot of other burials where there's been a lot of care and concern done because there's something quite, religious often attached to it. But they seem like those are all sort of chopped in a heap. So over a time, you tend to think the people who were putting them in didn't know them very well or couldn't care less about them. And that's just one thing I'd like to say. And the other thing I wanted to say about it, I loved those pots. I thought they were so beautifully done. Those indented pots.
I should have spent more time on that. And I appreciate you saying that. Anything else you'd like to say before we crack on with Adam?
No.
And as you like those images so much, we're gonna show them as Adam talks. Adam, anything you'd like to say?
No, thanks, Carl. Cheers, fellow.
Okay, right. Okay, Pat, anything you'd like to say?
Oh, thank you.
Okay, right. And Pat, are you going now, or am I seeing you Monday? What are you doing?
I'll see you Monday. Yes, I'll hang in a bit.
Oh, hang in a bit. That's okay. Right, who have we got next? Andy?
No, nothing, thank you. Really intriguing site, though.
Massively. We could have done a lot more on it, but as sites go, West Kennet Long Barrow, beautiful images. Right, who have got? Peter?
No, nothing else to say, but a really good one.
Thank you very much. And obviously, I'll see you tomorrow, Peter.
No, you won't see me tomorrow.
Oh, okay, then. All right.
Going shopping in MacArthur Glen.
Oh, all right, then, you big bloody wuss. You're turning into a fairy now. Are you shopping?
I need big boxers.
You can get them from anywhere. Who else have we got left? Who else have we got left? We have got
Hey,
hang on, I
Trina.
know you've got you. Is it just you then? Trina, you then?
The,
Me?
the dark one.
yes, very dark.
The
No,
Dark Lord.
I'm going to say something stupid like I usually do.
There you go.
If you look at the map, it's got 5 chambers, and it strikes me it looks like a body, and you're returning them to Mother Earth
Ooh.
when you bury them.
Oh, come on. Let's just do this then. Come on,
Ooh,
Anne.
nice,
Let's just bloody do this in the raw. Come on, hang on a minute.
nice observation. Yeah.
Nice
Yeah.
observation. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we? No, let's not have that one. Okay. Right. Okay then. Look, what about that there?
Yeah. Why not?
So right. Okay. Then you've got a womb.
Yes.
You've got some sort of fallopian tube. But can I just say, that's not in a woman's body. You don't have chambers like that.
Well, it could be arms and legs.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're doing it. You're doing it from a different perspective. Right. Okay. So the chamber's the head. The word chamber on the right. That's the head.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you've got these 2 little arms, and the 2 little arms. Your arms are shorter than your legs, aren't they? So
Sometimes.
go on, carry on.
No, just being silly. Go on.
No, you're not being silly. And we've got these sort of we've got these cup and ring marks in there as well, which are clearly Neolithic. These stones may have actually been re-erected from another monument. It's probably recycling. But there is one thing that we will say, right? When you do go to West Kennet Long Barrow, what you are seeing is that, as we've just read, which I didn't know totally, but that's sort of been slightly reconstructed. So what you are seeing has been mucked around with, which really screws with my bloody head. Oh God, it really does. I really wish they would just leave these things as they are. The best site to actually see, which hasn't really been mucked around with, is Wayland Smithy, right? Get and see Wayland Smithy near Uffington Horse, right? That's the site you need to get to, Wayland Smithy. On that note, as Anne, Adam, Andy, Drina, Peter, and Pat got anything else they would like to say?
No.
No.
No. Good night.
Yes, thank you.
So don't forget, money's in for next week, and also finally next week we are comparing Gordon Child with, who else did I say we were doing next week? Can you remember? Gertrude Bell.
Gertrude, I knew it was a Gertrude.
Yeah, we've got to do a Gertrude. Gotta be. Okay then. If there's no other questions, I really enjoyed that tonight. We have gone again to 12 minutes past 10. So hopefully David and Margaret and Peter are okay. So we'll see you all next week. Thank you very much for your time and your support. And Drina and Adam, Andy, Peter and Pat. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye. Bye.
Hi all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Carl.
My pleasure. No,
Bye.
my pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.
No, folks. Pete, go and get those boxer shorts. Boxer bloody shorts. He's got to go shopping for frigging boxer shorts. Who does that? You know what I mean? Pete, you've let the side down. Go sky clad, you know? And this little chick here. You okay? You okay? Little baby, she's lovely. I disturbed her from the sleep. I'm going to feed her first. I'm going to give her one last feed. She's trilling. There you go. Hang on. It's a finino. It's a finino. Finino. No. Right. Anyway, folks. Right. This is actually a turkey. Right. And this will be half my size. Well, Well, no, a third of my size, right? And she's he, so he. Anyway, I'm going to look in the chat box, see if there's anything in the chat box. Anyone watching now, really appreciate you joining us. If you want to say something, you need to say it now. We had about 4 people watching online at one point. That's okay, it's fine. So we're gonna nothing in the chat box on 3, 2, 1. Chat box off. Everyone's off. On go. And as for me, don't forget to like and subscribe. Really appreciate you watching. And I'm gonna say good night now. So nobody else has got anything else to say. Nos da chi. Heddwch yn awr ac Tregaron ti'n iawn. And ymyr o hyd. Iawn. Byddai siarad Cymraeg. Iawn. Diolch yn fawr chi. Gwelwch chi eto yn yr dydd. Na, dim dydd Llun a dydd Mawr a dydd Mercher. Ac Yfory. Yeah. Ar Ibari glas iawn. Diolch yn fawr chi. Nos da. Bye. No. Like, subscribe, join, blue button, join, please, join. £1.99 a month. Great, excellent. Thank you very much. Bye.